What would you do if you discovered that your employee skips lunch every day to feed someone else? Luiz Miguel Monteiro, a solitary millionaire from Guadalajara, observed something from his window that he would never forget. His housemaid kneeling in front of the back gate of his mansion, giving her only plate of food to an unknown child. What he didn't know was that this simple act concealed a love so pure it would end up transforming his life forever. Stay until the end and discover how a plate of food changed 3 destinies. Helena Morales walked through the marble hallways of the mansion with silent steps, as if she wanted to disappear into the shadows. At 34 years old, she had been working for Luiz Miguel Monteiro, a wealthy businessman from Guadalajara, for 5 years. His fortune was as vast as his loneliness. The house had 22 rooms, but only he lived there, surrounded by expensive paintings and furniture that no one used. Helena cleaned every corner with dedication, even though she knew many spaces hadn't been visited in months. Her light gray uniform was always impeccable, ironed by her own hands every night after returning to her small rented house in a humble neighborhood. Her black hair was tied up in a simple bun, never loose, as the rules required. Her hands bore the marks of hard work, but her brown eyes held a special light every time the clock struck 12:30 p.m. It was a sacred hour, the moment she waited for since waking up before dawn. That Wednesday in October, like every day, Helena went down to the main kitchen when the clock hands pointed at 12 o'clock. The head cook, Dona Remedios, had already served lunch for Mr. Monteiro in the formal dining room, though he rarely touched the food. Helena was entitled to 1 plate of food per day as part of her employment contract signed years ago. At noon, it was green enchiladas with chicken, red rice, and refried beans, all served on a deep white ceramic plate. The aroma of the green salsa with cilantro filled the small staff kitchen, making her stomach growl with hunger. She had been working since 5 a.m. without a break, surviving on just a black coffee and 2 Maria cookies she kept in her pocket. Dona Remedios watched her with curiosity every time Helena asked for her food to be served in a plastic container with a lid, never on a regular plate. The cook never asked questions, but her narrowed eyes betrayed her suspicion. Helena walked to the back gate of the mansion with the container, hidden inside a worn cloth bag. The Guadalajara sun beat down fiercely on the perfectly manicured garden, where purple bougainvillea climbed the wrought iron fence. Her black flat shoes crunched against the white gravel path that encircled the property. No one guarded that area at that hour. The other employees were eating in the staff dining room or resting in their quarters. The back gate was an old, dark wooden structure with a small metal window that Helena opened carefully to avoid making noise. On the other side, sitting on the cracked concrete sidewalk, was Raphael, her 11-year-old son, with his tattered school backpack resting against his skinny legs. He wore the uniform of his public school, faded blue jeans, and a white shirt with yellowish stains from repeated washing. His sneakers had holes at the toes, but his smile was the most beautiful thing Helena had ever seen. "Mom," Raphael whispered, stretching his small hands toward the container his mother passed through the window. His brown eyes shone with a mix of hunger and gratitude. Helena knelt on the other side of the gate to be at his level, though the which separated them. She could see her son's thin face, his cheeks sunken from the malnutrition she fought against day after day. Raphael opened the container, and the steam from the hot enchiladas rose into the dry air. The boy ate slowly, savoring each bite as if it were a royal feast. Helena watched him in silence, her hands pressed against her empty stomach, which growled for food. Every time Raphael smiled between bites, she felt it was all worth it. Working 14 hours a day, enduring back pain, ignoring constant hunger. Everything was justified in that sacred moment when she could see her child eat something warm and nutritious. "Did you eat yet, Mom?" Raphael asked with his mouth full, looking at her with those innocent eyes that still didn't understand how much she sacrificed for him. Helena smiled and nodded, a white lie she repeated every day for the past 3 years since she started working at the mansion. The truth was that she wouldn't eat until she got home around 8 p.m., where she'd have only a few tortillas with salt and chili. Her body had learned to function on 1 meal a day, though the exhaustion sometimes made her stumble while mopping the mansion's floors. Raphael finished eating and returned the empty container spotless, as if he'd licked it clean. Their goodbye was always quick, a virtual kiss blown to the metal window, before the boy ran off to his afternoon school 5 blocks away. Helena closed the gate carefully and hugged the empty container to her chest for a moment. No one in the mansion knew that every day she chose hunger, so her son could smile. Luiz Miguel Monteiro was climbing the marble stairs to his master bedroom when something caught his attention from the hallway window. From the second floor, there was a privileged view of the back garden and the old service gate that no one used anymore. It was 12:40 p.m. that Wednesday, and he had just finished a video conference that left him with a headache. In his 50s, he ran one of the most successful business groups in Jalisco, with investments in real estate technology and agribusiness. His black hair, combed back, showed some gray at the temples, giving him a distinguished look. He wore dark gray dress pants and a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, his usual work-from-home attire. The thin-framed glasses he used for reading rested on the bridge of his nose when he stopped by the window. What he saw made him forget his financial troubles entirely. Helena was kneeling in front of the back gate, her hands extended toward the metal window. Luiz Miguel squinted, trying to understand what his employee was doing in that position, almost as if she were praying. Then he saw the small hand of the child receiving something through the window, a plastic container that seemed to hold food. The entire scene lasted barely 5 minutes, but something about it captured the millionaire's attention in a way he couldn't explain. He watched as Helena looked at the child with a tenderness he had never seen in anyone, how she smiled despite her own cheeks growing more sunken each week. The child ate with restrained desperation, as if he knew this might be his only decent meal of the day. Luiz Miguel felt a strange pang in his chest, a mix of discomfort and curiosity. Who was that child, and why was Helena secretly giving him food? For the next 3 days, Luiz Miguel found himself waiting for 12:30 p.m. to discreetly position himself at that hallway window. On Thursday, he saw the same scene, Helena walking with her cloth bag to the gate, the child waiting on the other side, the silent delivery of the container. On Friday, he noticed Helena's shoes had worn soles, and her uniform, though clean, showed signs of too many washes. On Saturday, when most of the staff had the day off, Helena was still there, working unpaid overtime and still finding time to bring food to the child waiting faithfully on the sidewalk. Luiz Miguel began to feel something he hadn't experienced in years, genuine admiration for another human being. In his world of million-dollar contracts and ruthless negotiations, he had forgotten that there were people capable of giving without expecting anything in return. This humble woman was teaching him a lesson none of his Harvard professors could. The following Monday, Luiz Miguel canceled an important meeting and lingered longer than usual at the window. He saw Helena kneel with difficulty, as if her knees ached from constant work. He saw the child eat slowly, savoring each bite while talking to his mother through the window. He couldn't hear the words, but the gestures told a story of pure love and silent sacrifice. When Helena stood to return to the mansion, Luiz Miguel noticed her sway slightly, likely dizzy from hunger and exhaustion. He clenched his fist against the window frame, feeling an inexplicable anger at himself. He had lived in that house with Helena for 5 years, and he had never bothered to know her as a person. To him, she was just a name on the payroll, an efficient employee who kept his mansion spotless. Now, seeing her sacrifice in silence, he realized he had ignored the presence of someone truly extraordinary. On Tuesday morning, Luiz Miguel called Dona Remedios to his private office on the first floor. The cook entered, wiping her hands on her floral apron, looking nervous, as she always did when summoned by the boss. He sat behind his dark mahogany desk, surrounded by framed diplomas and photos of buildings he had constructed. He offered her a seat with a gesture, unusual, making Dona Remedios even more tense. Luiz Miguel got straight to the point, asking about Helena and her eating habits. The cook hesitated before confessing that Helena always asked for her food in plastic containers, and that she had never seen her eat in the staff dining room. Dona Remedios added in a low voice that she had noticed Helena keeping cookies in her pockets, and that her uniform was getting looser. Luiz Miguel thanked her for the information, and dismissed her with a gesture. Alone in his office, he looked out at the back garden, feeling something inside him change. That afternoon, He decided he needed to uncover the full truth about Helena and the child at the gate, though he still didn't know why it mattered so much to him. Dona Remedios' revelation kept Luis Miguel awake all Tuesday night. Lying in his bed with Egyptian linen sheets, he stared at the high ceiling of his bedroom, thinking about Helena and her plastic container. The clock on his nightstand marked 3 a.m. when he finally admitted something uncomfortable. He had been living in a bubble of privilege, ignoring the suffering of those around him. His father had taught him that employees were just numbers on a balance sheet, interchangeable parts in a company's machinery. But Helena was proving that behind every uniform was a person with their own stories and unseen sacrifices. He got out of bed and walked barefoot to his bedroom window, where he could see the faint lights of Guadalajara stretching to the horizon. Somewhere in that city, Helena was sleeping in a humble home after working 14 hours and eating barely a few tortillas. The contrast made him feel ashamed of his own empty existence. On Wednesday morning, Luis Miguel arrived early at his office, determined to change his perspective on many things. He reviewed the human resources files and found Helena Morales' record. 34 years old, widowed, living in the San Juan Bosco neighborhood, minimum wage, no absences or tardiness in 5 years of service. The file was so brief it fit on a single page, as if an entire life could be reduced to cold data. There was no photo attached, no personal notes, nothing that revealed who this woman really was. Luis Miguel closed the folder, feeling growing frustration with the system he himself had perpetuated for years. At 12:20 p.m., he abandoned his desk and ran up the stairs to the hallway window. He arrived just in time to see Helena walking toward the back gate with her cloth bag, her slow steps betraying accumulated exhaustion. The sun made her tied-back black hair shine, and for the first time, Luis Miguel noticed she was a beautiful woman despite the dark circles under her eyes and her sunken cheeks. The scene that noon was identical to the others, but Luis Miguel saw it with different eyes. Helena knelt before the gate with the same devotion as always, and the child received the container with pure gratitude. What struck the millionaire was realizing that this act repeated every day without exception, without complaint, without seeking recognition. Helena wasn't seeking applause or admiration. She simply loved through concrete actions. In Luis Miguel's world, people did favors expecting something in return. They signed contracts to protect their interests, donated money to appear in newspapers. But this woman gave the only thing she had, her food, without witnesses or cameras. She handed over her daily meal knowing she would go hungry, and she did it with a smile that lit up her tired face. Luis Miguel felt something break inside his chest, as if the concrete wall he had built around his heart was crumbling stone by stone. When Helena returned to the mansion with the empty container, Luis Miguel made an impulsive decision. He ran down the stairs 2 at a time and went out to the back garden, pretending to inspect the bougainvillea climbing the fences. Helena saw him approach and froze, her eyes wide, quickly hiding the container behind her back. The house protocol required employees to keep their distance from a boss unless directly summoned. She lowered her head in respect, expecting a reprimand for being in an area she wasn't supposed to be in. Luis Miguel approached slowly, removing his glasses to clean them with the edge of his white shirt, a nervous habit when he didn't know how to start a difficult conversation. The silence between them stretched for several seconds as the wind rustled the nearby trees' leaves. Finally, he spoke in a softer voice than he intended, asking if everything was okay with her work. Helena nodded quickly, too quickly, her hands trembling slightly as she held the container behind her gray uniform. "Mr. Monteiro, I'm sorry if I did something wrong," she murmured, her voice breaking, her brown eyes filled with genuine concern. Luis Miguel shook his head, surprised that she thought she was in trouble. He assured her that her work was impeccable, that the house had never been better cared for. He noticed her shoulders relax slightly, though her posture remained tense. He wanted to ask about the child at the gate, why she didn't eat her lunch, about the whole story he sensed behind her daily sacrifice, but the words stuck his throat because he didn't know how to express his curiosity without sounding intrusive or condescending. Helena took advantage of the awkward silence to apologize again and quickly walked toward the service entrance, disappearing into the shadows of the interior hallway. Luis Miguel stood alone in the garden, the sun burning his neck, a strange sensation fluttering in his stomach. For the first time in his adult life, he deeply admired someone who had no money, no university degree, no recognized last name. On Thursday afternoon, Luiz Miguel canceled all his meetings and told his driver he wouldn't need his services that day. At 12:15 p.m., he discreetly descended the service staircase used by the staff, a narrow hallway that smelled of pine detergent and floor wax. He had never walked through that part of his own house and was surprised by how different everything looked from that perspective. The walls were painted a plain light gray, without decorations. The floors were polished concrete instead of marble, and the windows were small without elegant curtains. It was like discovering that his mansion had two faces, one beautiful for guests and another functional for those who kept everything running. He reached the back door leading to the service garden, a small space with clotheslines and stacked plastic buckets. From there, he could see the old gate without being noticed, hidden behind a concrete pillar covered in vines. His heart was racing, as if he were pulling a prank instead of being on his own property. Helena appeared exactly at 12:30, punctual as always, walking down the gravel path with her cloth bag hanging from her shoulder. Luiz Miguel held his breath as he watched her approach the gate. She opened the metal window with practiced movements, and on the other side, the child's face appeared, lit up by a huge smile. The millionaire edged closer, taking advantage of their focus on their daily ritual. He positioned himself behind a jasmine bush, where he could hear their voices, though the wind carried some words away. Helena passed a container through the window while asking the child how school had gone. The boy responded enthusiastically, talking about a math class and a drawing he had made. His voice was high-pitched but firm, filled with the innocence of someone who still believes the world is good. "Do you have your sweater, Mijo? You know it gets cold in the afternoons," Helena said in a maternal tone, reaching through the window to touch the boy's cheek. Luiz Miguel saw her fingers caress the child's face with infinite tenderness. The boy nodded as he opened the container, and the aroma of mole poblano wafted into the air. He began eating with large spoonfuls, and Helena watched it with those eyes full of unconditional love that Luiz Miguel had only seen in movies. Then something happened that changed everything. The child spoke with his mouth half full, saying words that reached the millionaire's ears clearly. The words were simple, everyday, but loaded with meaning that hit him like a punch to the stomach. The boy called Helena Mom, not once, but 3 times in the same conversation. "Mom, this is delicious. Mom, I had a test today. Mom, I love you." Luiz Miguel felt his legs weaken. The full reality revealed itself before his eyes, as if someone had turned on all the lights in a dark room. Helena wasn't feeding a random child out of charity. She was sacrificing her own food so her son could eat. That was her child, her blood, her reason for getting up every morning before dawn. Luiz Miguel leaned against a concrete wall, feeling the world spin around him. He remembered all the times he had seen her walk slowly from exhaustion, how her uniform grew looser, how her cheeks sank week after week. She was literally wasting away to keep her son alive. There was no drama or complaints, just a silent, absolute love expressed in concrete actions day after day. The millionaire clenched his fists, trying to control the emotions threatening to overflow. For 5 years, Helena had worked in his house earning barely the minimum wage, and yet she found a way to be generous with the only thing she had. "Mom, did you eat already?" Raphael asked, the same words he repeated every noon, as Luiz Miguel could now hear. Helena's response was the same white lie, assuring him she had eaten well. The boy smiled, relieved, and continued devouring the mole with tortillas, while telling his mother about his best friend, Tono, and a soccer game they play on Saturday. Helena listened to every word, as if it were pure gold, nodding and asking questions that showed her genuine interest in her son's life. When Raphael finished eating, he wiped the container clean with the last tortilla and handed it back through the window. They said goodbye with blown kisses and promises to see each other that night. Helena closed the window carefully and hugged the empty container to her chest for a moment, her eyes closed, a peaceful expression on her face. Luiz Miguel had to bite his lower lip to stay silent, because something was running down his cheeks. He couldn't remember the last time he had cried, but in that moment, tears flowed without permission as he witnessed the purest love he had ever seen. Luiz Miguel returned to his room like a ghost, climbing the main stairs without really seeing the steps beneath his feet. He locked the solid mahogany door and sank onto the edge of his bed, still processing what he had just seen. Tears continued to fall uncontrollably, soaking the expensive fabric of his white Italian shirt. In his 50s, he had built a business empire by waking up at 5 a.m. every day, sacrificing personal relationships, declining social invitations, all focused on accumulating more money and power. But Helena, with a salary he earned in an hour, had discovered something he completely lacked: the ability to love unconditionally. He looked around his enormous room, decorated by an interior designer who charged a fortune to choose every piece of furniture. The olive green velvet curtains, the antique French desk, the crystal chandelier that cost more than Helena's annual salary. Everything was beautiful and empty, like his entire life. He stood and walked to the white marble bathroom, turning on the cold water to splash his face. His reflection in the mirror showed a man successful by the world's standards: strong jaw, piercing green eyes, neatly cut black hair, a fit body thanks to his private gym. But behind that perfect facade was a void no amount of money could fill. His father had died 10 years ago without ever saying he loved him, leaving only a company and the expectation to be ruthless in business. His mother lived in Paris with her third husband, calling twice a year to ask for bank transfers. He had never had a real romantic relationship because he always put work first, and the women who approached him only saw his bank account. Loneliness had been his companion for so long that he no longer recognized as abnormal. Until that day, when he saw true love expressed in a plate of moles shared through a rusty window. That night, Luiz Miguel couldn't focus on reviewing the contracts awaiting his signature on his office desk. The words blurred before his eyes as his mind replayed the gate scene over and over. Helena kneeling, Raphael smiling, the container passing from hungry hands to grateful ones. He slammed the document folder shut and walked to the window overlooking the front garden. The city lights twinkled in the distance like fallen stars. Somewhere in Guadalajara, Helena was arriving home after working 14 hours, likely eating only tortillas with salt. Raphael was doing homework under the dim light of a weak bulb, unaware of how much his mother sacrificed for him. The contrast between their reality and his was so stark that Luiz Miguel felt ashamed of every peso in his bank account. He pressed his forehead against the cold glass of the window and let the tears flow again, this time without trying to stop them. For the first time in decades, Luiz Miguel allowed himself to remember his own childhood. He had grown up in a mansion like this one, surrounded by employees who cared for him because they were paid, not because they loved him. His father was always traveling, closing deals in other cities or countries. His mother hosted elegant parties, but never asked how he felt or what he dreamed of. Birthdays were formal events with children from other wealthy families who attended out of social obligation. He never had someone kneel to be at his level, look at him with eyes full of unconditional tenderness, or sacrifice something of their own just to see him happy. Raphael, at 11 years old, already possessed the most valuable treasure in the world: a mother who loved him more than her own life. That boy with worn sneakers and a faded uniform was infinitely richer than the young Luiz Miguel, with his imported toys and a room full of unused things. The irony hit him with brutal force. Luiz Miguel stayed awake all night, sitting in a leather armchair in his office, as the clock slowly ticked toward dawn. He made important decisions in those dark hours, promises to himself under the invisible stars of the Guadalajara sky. He needed to repay Helena's kind heart, not with money she might refuse out of pride, but with something more meaningful. He wanted this woman to stop going hungry, for her son to have shoes without holes, for both to know a life where they didn't have to choose between eating or paying rent. But more than that, he wanted to learn from her, to understand how someone with so little could give so much. At 6 a.m. on Friday, as the first rays of sun painted the sky orange and pink, Luiz Miguel knew exactly what he would do. The plan forming in his mind was risky and broke all social protocols, but something inside him had changed forever, and he could no longer be the same cold man he was yesterday. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like this video and comment faith and love. Saturday dawned with a clear sky and pleasant autumn weather in Guadalajara. Luiz Miguel woke early despite sleeping only 3 hours. his stomach fluttering with nervous excitement. He showered with hot water, while mentally rehearsing what he would say when the moment came. He chose casual clothes from his wardrobe, unusual for him. Dark jeans, a sand-colored linen shirt rolled up to the elbows, and brown leather casual shoes. He wanted to look approachable, not intimidating. In the bathroom mirror, he practiced smiles that didn't look forced, relaxed gestures to hide his anxiety. At 9 a.m., he grabbed the keys to his personal black Toyota truck, which he rarely drove himself. He told the security staff he was going out alone and didn't need an escort, leaving them confused but unquestioning. As he drove through the city streets, he felt a strange freedom he hadn't experienced in years. The San Juan Bosco neighborhood was on the other side of Guadalajara, in an area with small houses and narrow streets. Luis Miguel had to check the GPS 3 times because he had never visited that part of the city despite living his whole life in Jalisco. The houses were simple, with sun-faded colorful facades and windows protected by rusty iron bars. Children played soccer in the street using stones as goalposts, and women swept the sidewalks in front of their homes. People looked curiously at his truck, which clearly didn't belong in the neighborhood. Finally, he found the address from the HR files, a small single-story house with peeling sky blue paint, a gray metal gate, and a window with patched white curtains. He parked the truck in front of the house, took several deep breaths, and stepped out, feeling as if he were about to cross a bridge with no turning back. He knocked on the metal gate with his knuckles, producing a metallic sound that echoed in the quiet street. He heard movement inside, quick footsteps approaching. Helena's cautious voice asked who it was from the other side. Luis Miguel cleared his throat and gave his name, feeling ridiculous for introducing himself formally in this context. The silence that followed lasted several eternal seconds. Finally, the gate opened slowly, creaking from unoiled hinges. Helena appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide with surprise and fear, wearing worn jeans and a simple pink blouse. Her black hair fell loose over her shoulders, and without the gray uniform, she looked younger, more vulnerable. Behind her, in the small concrete patio, Raphael was playing with a deflated plastic ball. The boy froze when he saw the stranger standing at their house. Helena's expression was a mix of confusion, embarrassment, and panic. "Mr. Monteiro, did something happen? Did I do something wrong at work?" Were the first words to spill from her lips, her voice trembling slightly. Luis Miguel quickly shook his head, raising his hands in a reassuring gesture. He assured her there was no problem, that her work was perfect as always. Helena didn't seem convinced. Her hands nervously twisted the fabric of her blouse. The house behind her was so small that Luis Miguel could see almost the entire interior from where he stood. A tiny living room with a patched sofa, a plastic table with 2 mismatched chairs, a visible kitchenette in the back with just 2 burners. The walls were white but showed damp stains in corners. Raphael slowly approached his mother, taking her hand in a protective gesture. The millionaire saw in the boy's eyes the same determination he had observed through the gate's window, a mix of innocence and maturity forced by circumstance. "I came to invite you and Raphael to have lunch with me," Luis Miguel said, his voice steadier than he felt inside. The words came out direct, no beating around the bush, because he had learned in business that clarity avoided misunderstandings. Helena blinked several times, as if she hadn't understood the Spanish correctly. Her mouth opened and closed without sound. Luis Miguel continued, explaining that he wanted to thank her for her years of impeccable service, that he considered it important to get to know the people who made his daily comfort possible better. The excuses sounded weak even to his own ears, but he couldn't tell the full truth, that he had been watching them in secret, that he had discovered her sacrifice, that her tears had changed him. Helena began to decline the invitation with nervous stammering, saying she didn't have appropriate clothes, that she didn't want to cause trouble, that Saturday was her day off. But then Luis Miguel smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his usually serious face, and said the words that would change everything. "Please, Helena, it would be an honor for me to share a meal with you and your son." Helena took 20 minutes to change and get Raphael ready, during which Luis Miguel waited patiently, sitting on the only sofa in the living room, which creaked under his weight. He observed every detail of the humble house, Framed photos in cheap frames showing Raphael at different stages of growth, a wooden crucifix on the main wall, handmade floral curtains, polished concrete floors shining from obsessive cleaning. There was no television, only an old radio on a shelf. Raphael's school books were neatly stacked in a corner next to notebooks covered in newspaper. Everything was poor but dignified, clean to the last corner, organized with the care of someone who deeply values the little they have. When Helena emerged from the only visible bedroom, she wore a simple wine-colored dress with long sleeves, likely her best outfit saved for special occasions. She had let her hair down and applied a bit of lip gloss, looking beautiful in a natural way that none of the women at Luiz Miguel's social events achieved with their surgeries and professional makeup. Raphael appeared behind his mother, wearing less worn jeans than his daily ones and a blue checkered shirt that was slightly too big. The boy had combed his black hair to one side with water, leaving visible comb marks. His shoes were the same ones with holes at the toes, but Helena had cleaned them until they shone like new. Luiz Miguel felt a lump in his throat seeing the effort both had made to look presentable. During the drive to the restaurant, a family place called Los Arcos that served fresh seafood, Helena and Raphael sat quietly, looking out the windows. The millionaire tried to start conversation by asking Raphael about school, but the boy answered with shy monosyllables while his mother watched him out of the corner of her eye. The tension in the air was palpable, as if they were all acting in a play without knowing their lines. When they arrived at Los Arcos, located in a middle-class residential area, Helena hesitated before getting out of the truck. The restaurant had nautical decor with fishing nets hanging from the ceiling and photos of boats on the walls. The waiter led them to a table by a window overlooking a small interior garden with a stone fountain. Raphael was fascinated, watching the water spout from a stone dolphin's mouth, his eyes shining with childlike wonder. Helena sat with her back very straight, hands in her lap, clearly uncomfortable in the setting. Luiz Miguel ordered a pitcher of hibiscus water and asked the waiter to bring the full menu. When Helena saw the prices on a laminated menu, her eyes widened, and she began saying she'd only have a glass of water, that she wasn't hungry. The millionaire insisted gently, explaining that he would pay for everything, and that it would be an insult to him if they didn't eat well. Raphael looked at his mother, waiting for permission, his stomach audibly growling. Finally, Helena gave in and ordered shrimp aguachile, while Raphael chose breaded fish fillet with fries after confirming 3 times that he could really order whatever he wanted. While they waited for the food, something magical happened that none of the 3 anticipated. Luiz Miguel asked Helena how she came to work at his house, and she began to tell her story in a soft voice that gradually gained confidence. She spoke of her husband, Javier, a kind and hard-working mechanic, who died in a traffic accident 5 years ago when Raphael was 6. She described being left alone with a young child, with no close family to support her and only a high school education. She explained that she tried various cleaning jobs in offices and homes until she landed the job at the Monteiro mansion, the best-paying one she had found. Her voice broke slightly as she admitted it was never enough money, that every month was a battle between paying rent, utilities, and buying food. Raphael listened to his mother's story as if hearing it for the first time, though he likely knew every word. His brown eyes grew misty when Helena mentioned his late father. Luiz Miguel instinctively reached across the table and took Helena's trembling hand, a gesture that surprised them both. "I never had what you give, Raphael," Luiz Miguel confessed in a hoarse voice, his own eyes misting behind his glasses. He began to talk about his lonely childhood, with physically or emotionally absent parents, a mansion full of things but empty of love. He admitted that he had built his business empire trying to fill a void that money could never satisfy. Helena listened with genuine attention, without judgment, just nodding with understanding. She said something he would never forget, simple but profound words spoken with the wisdom of someone who had suffered and learned. She told him that God puts people in our paths to teach us what really matters, that love is the only treasure worth accumulating. When the food arrived, the 3 were no longer boss, employee, and her son, but 3 human beings sharing their wounds and hopes. Raphael devoured his fillet with pure joy, occasionally interrupting to tell childish jokes that made Luiz Miguel laugh for the first time in months. That 2-hour lunch became the most real and meaningful moment the millionaire had experienced in his entire adult life. On Monday morning, Luiz Miguel arrived early at his office in the mansion with a fully formed plan in his mind. He called Dona Remedios and gave her specific instructions that left the cook speechless. Starting that day, lunch would be prepared for 3 people: Mr. Monteiro, Helena, and Rafael. The boy would arrive daily at 12:30 through the main gate, not the back one, and eat in the family dining room with his mother and the boss. Dona Remedios asked if she had heard correctly, and Luiz Miguel repeated the instructions firmly but without anger. Then he summoned Helena to his office, where she entered trembling, thinking she was finally being fired for accepting Saturday's invitation. The millionaire stood by the window, looking out at the garden where the bougainvillea bloomed in vibrant colors. He turned to her with a gentle expression that transformed his usually serious face. The words he spoke changed Elena's life in an instant. "Helena, I want Rafael to have lunch here with us starting today," Luiz Miguel said, leaning against the edge of his desk. Helena immediately shook her head, her hands gesturing nervously as she tried to decline the offer. She argued that she couldn't accept such generosity, that her salary was enough, that she didn't want to take advantage of the boss's kindness. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she spoke rapidly. Luiz Miguel raised a hand for silence, and when Helena stopped, he continued in a firm but warm voice. He explained that it wasn't charity but justice, that she worked harder than anyone in the house and deserved to see her son during the day. He added something that brought instant tears to Helena's eyes. He said he wanted her to prepare her best food each day because he would eat with them too. He would no longer dine alone in the formal dining room staring at empty walls, but would share the table with people who valued every bite. Furthermore, he continued, removing his glasses to clean them nervously, "I've decided to double your salary starting this month." Helena opened her mouth to protest, but no sound came out. Her legs trembled, and she had to hold on to the back of a leather chair in front of the desk. The millionaire explained that he had reviewed the salaries of all the staff, and hers was unfairly low considering her seniority and dedication. He did mention that he had seen her daily sacrifice, that he knew about the shared food container, that her tears had transformed him. Helena covered her face with both hands and began to sob uncontrollably, her body shaking with emotions too big to contain. Luiz Miguel approached and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, a paternal gesture he had never made with any employee. He gave her time to process the news while he waited patiently. When Helena could finally speak, she only managed a choked "thank you" that came straight from her soul. That same afternoon at 12:30 sharp, Rafael arrived at the mansion's main gate, as his mother had instructed him over the phone. The security guard, previously briefed by Luiz Miguel, greeted him kindly and led him down the main gravel path to the formal entrance. The boy walked with wide eyes, admiring the ornamental fountains, perfectly designed gardens, and imported marble sculptures. He had never seen so much beauty and luxury in one place. Helena was waiting at the entrance and hugged him tightly before leading him by the hand to the family dining room, a smaller, more intimate room than the main dining hall. The dark wood table was set for 3, with fine porcelain plates, silver cutlery, and crystal glasses. Rafael sat carefully, as if afraid to break something. Luiz Miguel arrived minutes later, having changed his formal shirt for a more casual one, and sat across from the boy with a genuine smile. Dona Remedios served mole poblano with white rice and freshly made tortillas, Rafael's favorite dish, as the millionaire had discovered. The conversation during that first lunch was initially awkward, with long silences broken by polite questions. But gradually, as Rafael relaxed under Luiz Miguel's genuine interest, the words flowed more naturally. The boy talked about his dream of becoming a professional soccer player, how he played on a vacant lot with his friends using a deflated ball, and how his favorite position was forward because he loved scoring goals. Luiz Miguel listened to every word with full attention, asking intelligent questions that showed real interest. Helena watched the interaction with silent tears rolling down her cheeks, seeing her son talk with this powerful man as if they were old friends. When they finished eating, Luiz Miguel asked if Rafael had to return to school immediately. The boy shook his head, explaining that his afternoon classes started at 3 p.m. The millionaire then invited him to see the back garden, where there was a wide space perfect for practicing soccer. For the first time in 5 years, the Monteiro mansion echoed with the laughter of a child, filling the empty spaces with a joy that money could never buy. The following months transformed the Monteiro mansion into something entirely different. Raphael arrived every noon with his worn backpack and bright smile, filling the marble hallways with childish energy that beautifully contrasted with the previous silence. Luiz Miguel reorganized his entire work schedule to be available for lunch, declining meetings he once considered priorities. The three sat in the family dining room, sharing not just food but stories, laughter, dreams, and worries. Helena began to gain healthy weight. Her cheeks regained color, and her gray uniform had to be adjusted because it was too big. The millionaire noticed every small change in her, how her smile appeared more often, how her brown eyes sparkled when Raphael said something funny, how her hands no longer trembled nervously when serving food. Dona Remedios commented in the kitchen that she had never seen the boss so relaxed, so human, so alive. The entire house breathed differently, as if the walls had absorbed the warmth of those daily lunches. One December afternoon, while Raphael did homework in the mansion's library under Helena's supervision, Luiz Miguel watched the boy focus on his newspaper-covered notebooks. The child bit the tip of his pencil, trying to solve math problems, his skinny legs swinging under the large chair. The millionaire approached and asked about the soccer dream Raphael had mentioned months earlier. The boy's eyes lit up as he passionately described his desire to play professionally, to score goals in packed stadiums, to make his mom proud. He spoke with the pure conviction of a child before the world teaches them to doubt their dreams. Luiz Miguel listened attentively, and when Raphael finished, the millionaire made a decision he had been considering for weeks. He explained that he knew an excellent sports academy in Zapopan where talented kids train to develop their soccer skills. He asked if Raphael would like to attend, with all expenses covered, including professional equipment. Raphael looked at his mother with pleading eyes, not daring to answer directly. Helena felt her heart split between immense gratitude and fear of accepting too much. She had learned from a young age that good things always came at a hidden cost, that extreme generosity hid impossible expectations. But when she looked into Luiz Miguel's green eyes, she saw no conditions or manipulation, just a genuine desire to help her son achieve his dreams. With a trembling voice, she asked why he was doing all this for them, what he expected in return. The millionaire's response was simple but devastatingly honest. He said they had given him something all his money could never buy. They had taught him the meaning of true love. They had shown him that real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts. He added that being allowed to be part of their lives was the greatest gift anyone had ever given him. Tears streamed down Helena's cheeks as she nodded, accepting her son's enrollment in the academy that would change his future. Training began in January, 3 times a week in the afternoons. Luiz Miguel not only paid the fees, but also accompanied Raphael to every session, sitting on the metal bleachers under the Guadalajara sun to watch the boy chase the ball with fierce determination. He bought new uniforms, professional sneakers, quality shin guards, everything Raphael needed to have the same opportunities as kids from wealthy families. On Saturdays, when Helena had the day off, the three went together to watch practice games. Luiz Miguel shouted cheers when Raphael touched the ball, clapped for every successful pass, and consoled him when he missed a shot. Other parents in the bleachers looked curiously at this elegant man cheering passionately for the boy from humble origins. But Luiz Miguel didn't notice their stares because he was completely absorbed in Raphael's happiness. After training, they bought ice cream at a nearby shop, the three of them walking through Zapopan streets, sharing cones of rompope and walnut. Those simple moments became the millionaire's favorites. Over the months, something deeper began to blossom between Luiz Miguel and Helena. Lunch conversations stretched longer, touching on personal topics, forgotten dreams, secret fears. He shared the pressure of running a business empire, sleepless nights worrying about decisions affecting hundreds of jobs. She spoke of memories of her late husband, but also admitted she had learned to live with the loss, that God had given her strength to move forward for Raphael. Their hands brushed accidentally when passing plates. Their gazes lingered a second too long. Their smiles took on special meaning. Raphael noticed the changes with a child's intuition and began making innocent comments about how nice it would be if Luiz Miguel were officially part of their family. One March day, after Raphael left for his afternoon classes, Luiz Miguel took Helena's hand in his and confessed something he had been holding back for weeks. He told her he had fallen in love with her, not just her kindness, but every part of her being. Helena cried as she responded that she, too, had discovered feelings she thought she'd never feel again, that her heart had learned to love anew thanks to this man who had come into their lives like a gift from God. The Children's Championship at the Academy took place on a sunny Saturday in April at Zapopan's Municipal Stadium. The stands were filled with families cheering for their kids, creating a festive atmosphere with flags, noisemakers, and colorful chants. Rafael played as a starting forward, wearing his team's red and white uniform, his eyes shining with intense focus. Helena and Luiz Miguel sat in the front row, their hands intertwined, no longer caring about appearances. Over the past months, their relationship had evolved naturally from employer and employee to something much deeper and genuine. He had met Helena's neighbors in San Juan Bosco, sharing simple dinners in her small home. She had learned to move comfortably in the mansion, not as an employee but as a special guest. The household staff noticed the changes and discreetly commented on the romance blooming before their eyes. Dona Remedio said she had never seen the boss so happy, so complete, so authentically human. The game was tied 2-2 with 5 minutes left. Rafael had played well all afternoon, running tirelessly, passing the ball with precision, defending when needed. The coach shouted instructions from the sideline as the clock ticked relentlessly. Then came the play that would remain etched in their memories forever. The midfielder stole the ball near the center of the field and passed it to Rafael, who sprinted toward the opposing goal with surprising speed for an 11-year-old. The defenders tried to catch him, but he weaved through them with natural skill, his skinny legs moving quickly over the green grass. Helena stood, hands over her mouth, her heart pounding so hard she felt it in her temples. Luiz Miguel shouted cheers in a hoarse voice, his fists clenched with tension. Rafael reached the penalty area and prepared his right leg. The goalkeeper came out to close the angle, and in that eternal second between preparation and execution, the entire stadium seemed to hold its breath. The shot was perfect, powerful yet precise, aimed at the top left corner where the goalkeeper couldn't reach. The ball hit the net with that satisfying sound soccer players live for. The referee whistled, signaling a valid goal, and the stands erupted in celebration. Rafael ran with arms outstretched toward his loved ones, jumping the low barrier separating the field from the stands and throwing himself into Helena and Luiz Miguel's arms. The three embraced in a pile of tears, laughter, and pure joy. Helena kissed her son's sweaty head, murmuring blessings and words of pride. Luiz Miguel wrapped his arms around both, feeling his heart might burst with happiness. Other spectators applauded the moving scene, some wiping tears, recognizing genuine love when they saw it. The coach had to shout Rafael's name 3 times to get him back on the field to finish the final minutes. After the 3-2 victory, while Rafael celebrated with his teammates, Luiz Miguel took Helena's hands in his. The stadium slowly emptied, families heading to the parking lot with flags and horns, but they stayed seated in the stands, enjoying the cool afternoon breeze. He had planned this moment for weeks, rehearsing words in his office, buying a simple but beautiful ring that he carried in his pants pocket. His hands trembled slightly as he began to speak, confessing that the past months had been the happiest of his life. He told her that she and Rafael had taught him the true meaning of family, home, and purpose. He admitted that his enormous mansion had always been just an empty house until they filled it with laughter and love. Helena listened, tears streaming freely down her cheeks as the sun began to set, painting the sky in oranges and pinks. Then Luiz Miguel did something he never imagined doing. He knelt before her on the metal bleachers, pulled the ring from his pocket, and asked if she would marry him. But first, he added with an emotional voice, he needed permission from someone very important. He stood and walked to where Rafael was packing his gear into a new sports backpack. The boy saw him approach and smiled with that heart-melting grin. Luiz Miguel knelt again, this time in front of the child, at his level. He explained that he deeply loved his mother, that he wanted to care for them both for the rest of his life, that he wished to be an official part of their family. Then he asked a question that would change everything forever. He asked Rafael for permission to marry Helena. The boy didn't hesitate for a second before throwing himself into the millionaire's arms. whispering words against his chest that made Luiz Miguel cry as never before. Raphael said he was already a father to him, that he had been since the day they shared their first lunch, that God had sent him to complete their family. 6 months later, in an intimate ceremony at a small chapel decorated with purple bougainvillea, Helena and Luiz Miguel married, surrounded by Dona Remedios, neighbors from San Juan Bosco, and Raphael's teammates. The cold mansion transformed into a warm home where laughter echoed daily, where family lunches were sacred, where love was expressed in concrete actions every day. Helena finally had peace and security. Raphael had a father who loved him unconditionally, and Luiz Miguel discovered that life's true luxury couldn't be bought with money. The plastic container that once passed through a rusty window now rested in a special place, reminding them that the greatest miracles are born from the smallest sacrifices made with infinite love. If this story touched your heart, give us a like and share it with someone who needs a reminder that God always has a perfect plan for our lives. Sometimes love arrives when we least expect it, transforming our pain into purpose and our loneliness into family. Remember, the greatest blessings often come wrapped in humble gestures. A mother's silent sacrifice, a child's grateful innocence, a lonely man's transformed heart, all come together when we trust in God's perfect timing. May the Lord bless your home with abundant love. May your table never lack food, nor your heart lack hope. And may you learn to see the miracles hidden in life's simplest moments. Amen.